Welcome to You Mad Ha, the podcast conceived out of brotherhood and presented with love. We want to welcome everyone to this second part of our Who Are We uh, segment or episodes. Um, Last week we covered uh, Rich, Ken, myself, Ty, and Quake's journey up through high school. We were missing our brother Hump, so he's going to start off today with his journey in life up through high school. He's also going to incorporate his academic journey as well, and then we'll funnel in with our academic journeys, and then we want to cover our experience in college. That's one of the things that prompted uh, this series of episodes. Is what was our college experience like? How did we make it out? College is not just is not a simple thing to get out of, to graduate from. So how did we grow from that? What was our experience, and how do we make it through? Like I mentioned, we had a viewer who had been seeing a lot of especially young Black men starting college, and they weren't finishing, and she felt like our journeys weren't much different from theirs. Okay, so we're going to jump in with Hump and his life experience, life journey, and go ahead and take it away, Hump.
Yeah, so I mean, the essence of it is I'm a simple country boy from Kenansville, North Carolina, born in a small town, born in Goldsboro, on Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, actually. But small town living, two stoplights, and we got the second one much later in my life, in my early life. Country road type of living, simple life. Didn't know much different. Great family structure. Mom was a homemaker and worked at the elementary school. My dad was a retired Army sergeant and owned his own business. So, wasn't affluent, but, for comparable standards, we lived pretty well. Happy-go-lucky childhood, three older brothers. Closest in age was 9 years older than I was. My oldest brother's 12 years older than I am. And learned a lot from them, good and bad. Mostly how not to get in trouble with my parents by the stuff that they were doing. And the bad stuff I didn't know I needed until later in life. But it worked out for the best. Education-wise, man, I got to honestly say we had some good teachers that built some strong foundations. I think back to AP Blackmore, who was, a retired military guy himself, but used to say a lot of things that I find myself saying later in life and didn't realize what they were when he was saying them. We had a Miss Alphin who, unassuming, but a great teacher, just building some great foundation. And some other things around education I didn't realize until later on is having a dad who was kind of a gadget dude. So whether it was something pertaining to his work or or if it was something that he saw that he thought was quote cutting edge around education. So I had what was called a Mr. Professor, which was like a little math calculator that gave me math problems. Right. We had like 4 or 5 levels on that joint, and I to this day I do simple math in my head, and I think back to when I do numbers, I see those red numbers on the screen right in my head, and it's crazy. But I also had a spelling bee. I had a spelling bee with a book full of different pictures. And then there was levels where you could guess a word. Again, the foundation was being built. I didn't even know it. By the time I got to middle school, Beta Club and all the honor society, I just took that stuff as what you were supposed to do. I didn't really look at it as thinking that I was better or thinking I was smarter. I just thought that's what you were supposed to do when you were in school. And even through high school, I was cruising along pretty well, playing some sports and academically doing decent. I think it was a Marshall my junior year, which was a pretty big deal. I didn't think it was a big deal, but in hindsight, it was a pretty big deal. And then I took this class called Calculus with Mr. Jack Dempsey. And reality set in around academics of like, all right, bro, you ain't cruising no more. It just got
Right.
real. I was math club president too, and I lost my presidency because of that. But I ain't gonna
Oh,
on that
wow.
too. All right, well, yeah, it was bad, bro. It was bad.
So you it seems like you were always very accomplished in the classroom. Did that come easy to you, or?
I held my own. I studied. I one thing that was, and to this day, is if I'm paying attention, I usually get it, right? And as the teachers were talking, I was usually pretty locked in. I wasn't a class clown. I wasn't joking around. And it made it easier for me when I had to study. Memory was good. And I associated a lot of stuff. Ironically, I associated a lot of stuff with sports, like history, like 1892. If that was a year, I would think, in today's terms, Peyton Manning and Reggie Williams, right? Yeah, I mean, Reggie, yeah. I had numbers. That associated stuff. I could remember things. And, when it came time to study, I did it, but I wasn't a nerd. I wasn't the most studious guy. Just repetition once or twice, and I could pick it up and I could remember, recall it. Now, the question I do this with my kids is like, how much are you learning versus how much are you memorizing? And I memorized quite a bit. Huh?
Because he's a little bit modest here, very modest.
I was gonna say, it sounds like
when I rolled in, but in 7th grade, and going back to my story last week, when I got to when we all came together in our 7th grade year, right? Quake and I, and the way our school was organized, 7-1, 7-2, 7-3. And the 7-3 were the higher performing kids, 7-1 were the lower performing, right? It was kind of, I'm not sure if this is a good practice, but that's the way they did it. There were only 2 black boys in that class of 7-3, and Hump was one of them.
I remember you said that.
And I was constantly chasing the other one because he was smarter than all of us.
Now look, when Hump said Beta Club, I was like, I didn't even know what a Beta Club was in high school.
Again, like I said, man, I don't think I took it for granted, but I did. But I think that's what I thought I was supposed to do, right? And I'm sure Ken touched on this a little bit too. And by the time we all got together in the 8th grade, it became very competitive. I mean, we got good grades because we were always trying to outdo each other.
Right, mention that.
Yeah. And that iron sharper than iron goes back a long way for us. And that was on the field, that was in the classroom, chasing skirts, if you wanted to call it that too. I mean, we were always trying to outdo each other. So, I mean, that was kind of what we did, man. And like I said, but by the time we got to high school and knowing that, going to college was a given, we knew we wanted to do that. I knew I wanted to do that. And it was, and I'll say this very lightly, but our counselors didn't always have our best interests at heart.
That's right.
They didn't project to us the things that we were capable of, even though we may have been achieving academically. But the one thing that was eye-opener to me was we did have a quote career day or college day in the cafeteria in Quaker. Ken, I don't know if you guys remember this, but we had all the schools in there, and predominantly we had some HBCUs in there. So, I mean, they were offering admission on the spot. And A&T and Central, and they were there. Elizabeth City, and I don't know State. I don't think Carolina. I don't remember Carolina there, but I think State was there, and a few
State, East Carolina,
Mount Olive.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing.
Well, I don't think Chapel Hill was there because we were big time. We were big time Tar Heel fans. And sports and everything, and that was one of the.
You were checking for them.
Oh, they weren't there, right?
They weren't there.
Gotcha.
And as a matter of fact, this is a funny story. I remember when it came time to apply to UNC. As much as I loved them as a school, as from a sports perspective, you had to write an essay back then, and at that time, you didn't have to write essays for schools. Right. Like it was like filling out the paperwork, and you had your GPA on there. And you give a transcript, and they made the decision. So I was like, essay? I ain't writing no essay. Why gotta write essay? I ain't had to write one from nowhere else. I ain't writing no essay. So never even applied there. But yeah, it was a path that we knew we were going on. And I took one of the classes I took in high school was accounting. So I didn't know anything in my life. I didn't know any accountants. I didn't have any personal connection, but I enjoyed that class. And we could talk about when we get to A&T, get to the college level about what that class, how that translated to the accounting major. And I was sold a bag of goods, but that wasn't accounting. That was bookkeeping.
Right.
I remember this in the context of what you just said about the career day. Let me bounce this off you.
Yeah.
Career day when only HBCUs that were there.
Yeah.
Up and I walked up to the table at 8 to talk to the person from A&T.
Mm-hmm.
They said to us, they asked us our GPA and they asked us our SAT score.
Yeah.
I'll always remember this.
Mm-hmm.
Hump's SAT score, I hope you don't mind me telling you, was a 1060.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was a 980, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they turned to us and said, hey, I can get y'all scholarships to go to A&T in accounting. And they said, in fact, they turned to me and said, at 980, you're pretty close, maybe. But you at 1060, you will definitely get a scholarship.
Yeah. I don't remember that. I don't remember that, but I don't doubt it because I was a Craig scholarship. That was one of the scholarships I got coming out. And that I don't even know if that happens today. I doubt it happens today.
Probably not.
But that, again, where would we have been, in the process if that hadn't happened, right? To have those. I had a full ride to Fayetteville State, and my dad actually said, "I'll buy you an RX-7 if you go to Fayetteville State." And I said, why do I want to go back to high school? I just left high school. Now, that's nothing against Fayetteville State at the time. But the majority there was a lot of folks from our school that was going to Fayetteville State. And I didn't want to go where everybody was going, right? And it was
close. You wanted a new experience.
Yeah, and it was too close to the crib. It was 45 minutes to an hour. I needed to get away a little bit. So,
gotcha.
But all that just played into knowing that we made the right decision. And then by the time we rolled up to Aggie Fest, me, Quake, and Ken in the car and rolled to Aggie Fest. It was a wrap. That was in '88. I knew where I was going to school. And they had a nationally accredited accounting department. That's another thing that I will factor into later into this. There were 3 nationally accredited accounting departments in the school in the state of North Carolina: A&T, Charlotte, and UNC. I did apply to Charlotte. I did get into Charlotte. They were giving me some money. I was getting recruited to play baseball at Charlotte, and they wanted me to walk on and then play my second, and then possibly have a scholarship. And at that point, I had already said I was going to stop playing baseball. But that just factored in. So by the time we got the Aggie Fest, I'm like, and they got the major, the national credit that I wanted to go in anyway. Yeah, it was a wrap. It was a wrap. Exactly. All the applications was out the door at that point.
Perfect. Excellent. So Quake, why don't you chime in? You've been quiet, man. Why don't you give us your academic journey? Then we kind of know a little bit of it just based on what Ken and Hump have said, but give us your perspective.
I think I hit on this last week, but I've always been a middle of the road academic guy, right? I don't think, honestly, I took academics serious until I went back to school, right? So during my journey, I got sidetracked and got married and had a kid. And at that point, I sat out. And when I went back to school, I changed majors from psychology, went back to school business with a concentration in marketing, which I probably should have done initially. It just jarred. Hump hit a memory with that computerized accounting class that we took in high school. I never thought about it as a career or either a major, but at any rate, when I went back and switched to the School of Business, it was easy. I won't say easy, but it came naturally, right? And that's something that I probably made a mistake with from the beginning. but nonetheless, I went on. I graduated, and I started working in the business sector. So at this point, I'm 20 plus years in healthcare. And a few years ago, I went back and got my master's in healthcare administration. So I'm not doing anything different at this point, but cruising, right?
So when you were younger, elementary school, middle school,
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of taking classes, just, I'm just enjoying life, high school.
I think for me, and I don't want to sound redundant, but it all comes into full circle. I think I was probably a middle of the road kid with low expectations. And when I say low expectations, I'm not talking about me personally. I'm talking about from the educators that we had, right? We had people that had college degrees, but they were not really pointing us in the direction of higher learning or higher education. Mm-hmm. So those things we kind of got on our own. We didn't have guidance counselors sitting there tracking us into college curriculums that I know of, right? And this is not just the three of us. I think this was everyone that looked like us. And to be fully transparent, I think Hump may have had more of a inside track than the rest of us because he was on that trajectory of higher education, but the conversations still weren't being had.
That's right.
Oh wow. Okay.
Right. That's right.
And when
he always had a reputation, so it made no sense. Right? It made no sense because he was always a high performing student. Even in being a middle of the road student, I'm still a 3+ GPA, but I never had anybody to say, "Hey, what do you guys want to do after high school?" Wow. Yeah. It was really us deciding what we wanted to do. It was never steering us into the right direction.
Your parents. Did your parents did suggest to you guys though, right?
So I'll tell you how I wound up at A&T, right? I had no idea what I was going to do post high school, and it didn't include college. So my thoughts were I was going to attend the Air Force. And my mother and my aunt and my grandmother, they kind of cornered me. It's like, look, you're going to be the first one to go to college. And at that point, it was like, okay, well, I'll try. So I had not applied, and this was our spring semester senior year. So I said, okay, I'll try it. So mind you, I hadn't applied, so I couldn't get in the fall. So I went on and I submitted applications and I worked the semester. So I actually started school in spring of 90, where Hump and Ken came in the fall of 89.
That's right.
So and then I worked, I saved my money, and I don't think to this day my parents know what I paid. I paid tuition. I paid everything. And again, they don't know about me taking the SAT. They don't know about me applying. Nothing. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So when I hear these kids now that are grumbling about the opportunities that are laid out before them, I have little remorse for whatever they're saying because I know it can be done.
That's right.
Amen.
And go ahead, Paul.
I was gonna say, so in that high school setting, the guidance counselors, you guys said they didn't direct you, but they knew you had the grades, right? Do you think that was just a social economic? They didn't really see kids that were going on to do things, or was it just a racial thing? Do you feel like where it's like we're not giving these Black kids the same opportunity? What do you think was the reason behind you guys not getting that support at your school?
So there were other African Americans that had gone on to college. Now, what their stories were, I can't elaborate. I could only give you what I know to be true. And even when we came to Aggie Fest, we saw other people from our high school that were current Aggies.
Yeah, I think you had your superlatives, like you had your Jennifer Faisons of the world. Like she was like super smart, super athletic, played every sport, and they looked out for Jennifer. Where did Jennifer go to school?
A&T.
She went to
She wound up going to A&T, right? Yeah.
Ohio State or something like that.
Yeah. But Jennifer was super smart, and they wanted. But even as smart as she was, I don't think she was getting. Hey, you should maybe look at an Ivy League school, or you should look at a creme white school. I mean, we were in a time where we had counselors and most of the teachers who, if they weren't Black, they had you in a place in their mind that's where you were going to be. You were going to the military. Gotcha. You were going to work for the manufacturing company there locally, or you may go to a HBCU or a small school or community college and see where you go from there. But there was nobody laying a path, man. There was nobody. Like, I can't remember saying, hey, you might want to take this course because it'll set you up for doing this. There was none of that. There was none of that.
And I've been resentful because this is the grown person talking now, where we've seen time and time again, people succeed and figure it out, right? The resentment part is, had we had some kind of direction at that point, what could life have been? And life is good, don't get me wrong, but we had to figure it out, and we figured it out amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So even though the hurdles were there, you figured it out. You figured out how to get over those hurdles.
Yeah. Circle back to Rich's question real quick though. Like Quake, in my immediate family, I was the first one who was going to college. My 3 older brothers, 2 of them went to the Air Force, and 1 graduated and started working. And so they didn't have a lot to pull from to say you should be doing this, you should be doing that. They knew that good grades would eventually equal to something,
right?
But they weren't saying what you should major in and what you should be doing. Now, ironically, as my dad was in the Army, he was 82nd Airborne by the time he got out, but he was logistics. I didn't know a lot about that, but I wound up doing supply chain, which is closely related to logistics. Who knew, right? But there wasn't a lot of guidance there either. It's like, just get good grades and good things to happen, or they're supposed to happen. But there was no guidance around that. So we were literally flying blind. And thank God we had some cousins. I had a couple of cousins that had gone to school who kind of dropped some tidbits. And thank God we had some folks who were, ourselves, who could talk to each other about other conversations that we had. And again, shoot, I mean, let's be honest, some of that stuff happened when we got to A&T. I mean,
absolutely.
We talked to other people and we talked to each other, and that helped us do things that we probably wouldn't have known about had we not had those conversations.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Rich, oops, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Pete, I don't know. In my mind, I don't know what to make in retrospect of the environment we had at our high school and whatnot, right? Because there were weird things. By way of example, we had this. I was class student body president, but I was one of 2.
Okay.
We had a Black one and a white one. And I'm not sure why that was. I'm not sure if it was. I'm not sure. Was it because? Maybe you guys cross it. What was it because we had more Black students, and if it was just an election process, that we would have had a Black one and probably wouldn't have got white ones, or was it like a to be equal, right? I never understood why there were
we were 20 years away from segregation, man. We were 20 years away.
Yeah. So how was that framed? Did you guys actually vote on a Black president and a white? They actually had that on the ballots, right?
Yes.
Did they? I don't remember that. I don't remember.
Yes, that was the ballot.
A number of
That was the
for
ballot.
student government positions, there had to be a black one and a white one. There was me and
Wow.
Patricia Tyner. Clay. So we were there.
And tell the people where exactly where your town is located, where you guys, where Kenansville, where exactly it's located.
Duplin County
on a map. If you look
Right.
on a map, like how would they find it?
It's south of Goldsboro, west of Jacksonville, east of Fayetteville, and north of Wilmington. Almost equal distance in between all four of them.
So this is on the eastern side of North Carolina.
Eastern part of the state.
Yep.
And this was in an era where things were supposed to be different.
Again, we were 20 years away from segregation. I mean, we went to middle school where that was the high school for black students, where I was, and then Kim went to Charity Middle School where that was a black high school at the time before integration. So the mindset was still there, and you know, sad as it is, a lot of teachers still had that mindset. Most of the black teachers at our high school had come from that middle school. That was the high school, and most of the white teachers in high school had been at the white high school. So the mindset, it didn't, you know, we didn't know what we know now. And so it didn't really, I know to me, it didn't really register as much as it did now. You know, it was, as you get older, the blinders open up a little bit more, but like this, when you're younger and you just thought that's the way it was.
Right.
And that's why we are where we are now. In this country. But either way, so Kim, why don't you want to add more to your academic journey? Is there anything else you want the people to kind of know?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about where I think Hump was around the accounting piece, right? I think we always have to remember that in the 80s, accounting was a profession, right? It was a profession that was a lot hotter than, I liken it to like cybersecurity today, right? And what we didn't know a ton about it, like Hump said, we took a class or two that all three of us took, and it was intriguing, and numbers was always kind of for a lot of us our thing. And then when A&T came to our high school, it was almost like a no-brainer, right? And I would dare say, and Pete, can I go into college with this, or you might stay in high school? Can I go into college with it, or? What
part of it? Is this about your major?
Yeah, and academics. Yes, academics into college. No,
go ahead and drop it in. Go ahead and drop it in.
Because the what, and I think Hump alluded to this a little bit, so I'll just say it, right. We were kind of sold on accounting. That like it was a thing that could make you rich. Right?
So that's how you saw it.
White picket fence rich.
Exactly. And once we landed at A&T, right, which had become that accredited college of business at HBCU, then like the momentum just kept going, right? That you kind of had to do this because it was you had to go work for then one of the big 8 or the big 6 or whatever it was.
Right.
And you know, so push, right? Learn your accounting type stuff. You know, it probably wasn't enough. And I've kind of said this in bigger rooms that there should have been more kind of discussion with us about other paths.
Yeah.
Right. In business. Right. One of the things that, as I sit on, the College of Business today that we all went through, I talk about how, entrepreneurship, right, should have been, it should be more of a conversation for our people at our colleges. And I'm, Hump just mentioned it. His father was an entrepreneur, man. And he lived, as he said, they lived a much better life than the rest of us who were, employees at the plant down the road and stuff like that. And so many of us, and I don't think I'm knocking us. There's a lot of shit that we had to learn as people, as like our parents and older folks about what was going to work, right? So, like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm critical of them. In many ways, the criticism that may sound like we have for our high school can be kind of rolled out larger to even our college experience, because there was just so many more paths that, we still had to figure out. Like, how do you, like, what do you do with the academic talent that you have, right? And we all had, we had it. We did pretty well in school. We came into A&T rolling, right? Hub talked about. I think in your class, I think in our class, you were number 10. I was number 14. We came in with momentum and then hit the ground, right? And then Quake came in the spring, and we were rolling, but we still didn't have, like, there wasn't like a blueprint, right? And so you had to
say that
kinda,
again. Say that again. There wasn't like a what?
There wasn't a blueprint. There wasn't like,
oh yeah.
It wasn't even like older cats per se, or case studies of people that we saw that could kind of mentor us, right? Show us.
I'll take it a step forward too, because you mentioned about, it was the big 6 or nothing. When you think about all the other types of jobs in accounting that weren't even promoted. I mean, it wasn't even a thought. It was like, you didn't let that internship, then you may go work in an accounting department for, some Fortune 500, but at its core, everything we were being taught was grooming us to be CPAs.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. And it was CPA or bus, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so
hold on.
That was a great path.
I was about to say, is CPA a bad thing?
It's not.
Okay.
It's not.
Necessarily, yeah.
It is
Especially then it was.
do that, right? Because it is a very arcane profession. And props off to everyone who's done it,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
But because it's not easy, right? And what Hump is saying is, like, we had to make, and I always think back on this, we had to make decisions about, like, I didn't want to be a auditor. I like, for whatever reason, for what I heard, it just didn't appeal to me, right? And so my internships, what I pursued was working in a company, right? Which, beyond this thing that we had just heard, like, shit, man, everybody worked for a company. I thought that was cool. Why GE? That's a nice company from what I can see. Why come I can't work there? Right? But it was almost tunnel vision on that stuff, right? And it's not to demean the CPA part. Okay. It's more that there are just other paths that almost like when you said last week around, if you'd have been given a trade option or something like that, would have been better served. There are a lot of things that a lot of us could do that was beyond the CPA, which was, keep me honest, huh? Was like 80 to 90% of the conversation in those days.
Absolutely. Everything that you were in that curriculum was preparing you to take the CPA, and that even to the point my senior year, I took a CPA class and for a prep class, and I actually sat for the CPA, knowing that I was going to the military, knowing that I wasn't even going to work in any private sector when I came out. But yeah, everything that we took was grooming us to get prepared for that path.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna jump back to that a little bit later once we talk about our college experience. But Rich, why don't you jump in and give us your academic history and kind of journey, and where you came from, and through high school.
Well, I'm gonna just touch on junior high just a little bit, because my 9th grade year, it was when we transitioned. We were transitioning into the 4 years. Well, no, it wasn't my 9th grade year. When it was supposed to be, because our high schools at one time were 10 through 12.
Same as ours.
That year that we were supposed to be the freshmen, we actually came in as sophomore.
Oh shit! Okay, I didn't ever have it. Okay.
But that 8th grade year, I was the president of the student body at my middle school.
Nice.
Okay.
And then I became the student body president. Well, no, I guess I was in the 9th grade in junior high. I'm getting a little mixed up. So I was the middle school president of ninth grade, which was the whole school.
Mm-hmm.
Sophomore year, I was a student, the sophomore class president. And then junior year. By my senior year, I really was not into it. It was kind of like the counselor was putting a lot of pressure on me. There was a lot of, I don't know. I was talking to Paul about this. I felt like my high school years, I kind of fell through the cracks in regards to family and just, I was pretty much scatterbrained. Y'all know about my mom not being, my biological mom not being part of my life. And then my brothers, one was at Carolina, one was at Duke. They were, dad was focused on making sure they were straight. And then he had another new family. Not that I wasn't a part of the family, but I was like the middle child. So I kind of fell in between the cracks. And not a bad thing. I mean, in retrospect, it was a tough time for me. But it also transitioned into college. But I was always middle of the road grades. I wasn't, if I got a 3.1, I was happy. As we talk about what, I said my dream was to play pro football. I wanted to be a running back, but nobody ever pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, kid, it ain't happening." You need a plan B. My dad was always honest though. He was like, "You're gonna have to work." So I was the kind of kid that the middle school bus would make a stop at the high school. When I was in middle school, I was going in there and lifting weights with the football players, even though I rode the pine and didn't really get much minutes in middle school. But I was a late bloomer. I wasn't growing. I didn't grow fast, kind of like my son. I just, I don't know, biologically, I was just a late bloomer. My senior year in high school, I was 5'4", 154 pounds. So I was a little chubby, chunky dude. And then I didn't get that many more inches, but I got 3 inches in between senior year in high school, the end of senior year in high school and college. But I don't know. School was school. Like I said to you guys, there was a level of expectation. I knew I was going to college. Didn't really have a plan B as to what I wanted to study. I flirted with, maybe I want to be an engineer. Like I said, I wanted to make money. So it wasn't about something that I enjoyed. It was like, if I have the aptitude, I can learn this and do this. So there wasn't like a true hunger and desire to learn. When I look back, man, it was wasted money. I mean, it really was. I mean, I got a degree, but I probably needed, we talked about this. Y'all said, should I have gone into the service? I probably should have gone into the service. But just to show how much I wasn't certain about anything, I knew I was going to college. I had a cousin that was on full ride scholarship for football at South Carolina State that I hung with a lot. I said, I'll go to South Carolina State. I was going because he went there. It wasn't because they had some stellar program for me to, learn any skill sets, and not to knock South Carolina State, but back then, going from South Carolina State to A&T, I came to realize how awesome A&T was in comparison to South Carolina State.
Hey, Rich, it ain't changed.
I know.
Not much.
Hey, so check this out. I know this ain't the college part, but Ken Jr., y'all's frat brother, we were there together for that one semester. Y'all know he's a sharp cat, right? So everybody had to take pre-cal. Ken had already taken calculus 1. I mean calculus 2, right? So we're in there, first class, huge auditorium where all the freshmen have to take it at South Carolina State. And the professor has benefited because he has created the text. It's, the little manual textbook that's been handed out. That first class, Ken Freak Jr. is in there speaking out loud about corrections that to the text.
Wow.
And I'm going to say what was bad about me. Back then, it was all about the skirts. So while we leaving the class and we headed back to the dorm, the girls are like, can we get, assistance? Can we? And he's so focused, and I'm back there like, what time you coming?
Academics
That's
on the back
how I
burner for
remember
me.
it, but I'm sure there'll be nobody from back then that will remember it that way. But
Hey man, that's part of the college experience, right?
yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know. You see the haves and the have-nots. Like Auntie, if this was a recruiting tape, I'm telling you, it's the school. It just is. It just is. There's no denying it. But anyway, I think that pretty much covers everything, P. Grades were academics. I wasn't very focused. I regret that.
Mm-hmm.
School was kind of, when you're in that mode where you're supposed to be getting those social skills and stuff, and you're biologically, you're not moving at the same pace as everybody else. There's a moment where you miss out on that social stuff. You just do. You know what I mean? Because there's a standard process that we migrate and get to where we can communicate with the girl, do those things. But if you're being looked at like the little brother the whole time, there's a delay. So that.
But Rich, I know you were getting late. Don't try to downplay it. I know. Trust. Come on. I know. Don't try to downplay it now.
Okay. Well, it wasn't the quality that I was looking for.
See, that's the difference. See, there you go. You try to make it seem like he wasn't getting the benefits of whatever was going on.
Listen, I'm just saying,
don't downplay it.
Gentlemen, is there different levels of quality?
Rich, you forget I know your history, man.
You're making me very uncomfortable.
Hey, Rich, some people think a 10 is 3.5, man. 3 3/3. So, however you get the 10, bro.
Take it any way you can get it.
Yo.
It is 2 5s or 5 2s.
Right. Hey, let's move on to the next question.
I know that's right.
So let me give you guys my journey here. It's a little different. It's a lot different from all of yours. Like Rich mentions, he was, class president, and Hump was beta club. Kid is in his top 14 in his class. Quake said he's even, middle of the road. I wasn't even that when I started. Remember I mentioned to you guys, when my mother got married again, it was kind of just me. So I probably couldn't even really read until maybe 3rd or 4th grade. It didn't really start until then. So I remember being in, and Rich might remember this, in Sunday school, and Miss Pearl was her name. I love Miss Pearl. She was man.
Every Sunday school Miss Pearl, though, P. Every Sunday.
Miss Pearl was the one. So she made us read in class, right? So I remember making it up in my mind. I was like, I'm just going to read every word and make sure I get every word correct. I don't care how slow or fast I read. Now Rich is in there, Kitty Free is in there, and they're laughing their ass off. They're laughing.
Were we?
Right? Oh yeah. I mean, who wouldn't have?
I don't remember laughing. We were young. But I don't remember that.
But here's the thing. I focused on me. It didn't matter. I could have smacked somebody. I could have got bad, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to learn to read. Right? And here's the thing. So I never really had anyone to help me with that stuff. My mother would would buy me a textbook actually, right? It's like, hey, here, you need to do this. You need to get back up to speed. I'm like, how can I read the book if I can't really read? Like, you know what I mean? Same thing with math. Like I never had anybody to really help me. My grandmother was she had to drop out of high school in the 9th grade. So, but I remember in, I think the 5th grade, I was, we had these reading assignments, right? So you go through these reading assignments. So I remember really enjoying that, but I never really sat down and read books and stuff like that. But I remember I got to 6th grade, and I'm in, I think, a math class, and I looked around at who was in my class, and I was like, dog, these guys are not who I want to be associated with throughout life, So I remember I went home and I actually started to study. I took out the homework and I started doing the homework, right?
Motivation, baby.
I'm saying, But that's something that's so simple. But if nobody's there to really, my grandmother would say, get out your lesson, son. Get out your lesson, son.
Oh yeah.
But that's as a boy in a house with an older, grandparent, that's kind of a hard. You kind of fool your way through it. Yeah, I did it. My kids do that. Used to do that to me sometimes. Yeah, I did it. But when I say I had to kind of get it out the mud. That's where I had to start from.
Okay.
I was clawing my way through now, and it wasn't because I thought I was ever going to be a doctor or a lawyer. I just wanted to start competing and not be seen as, this guy's a dumbass. He can't do it. So from that point forward, I actually just started kind of climbing, and it wasn't again because I wanted to be anything. I just might like a certain class where I would want to do well in. So by the time I got to like high school, I moved up, and I was able to take college prep classes or even higher. I actually was in some more difficult classes. Once I got to like junior, senior year, like I was a freshman, I had like seniors in my classes. So I kind of moved up the ladder, but I still at that point hadn't really dawned on me that this is how you become successful in life. I still kind of had a thing where I didn't really believe it. I'm just kind of like, I'm black. It's probably not going to happen. My teachers don't expect it from me. This is the kind of high school I went to. Like I had a drafting teacher, and you remember when the space shuttle blew up?
Yeah.
So when the space shuttle blew up, my drafting teacher actually said the black guy did something wrong. It was his fault.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow.
Really?
The day of, when it happened. So that's the kind of that's the kind of high school I went to Ragsdale High School. I can say the high school. I went to Ragsdale High School. And like I mentioned, it's a predominantly white house, but you have people from Turkey. There's plenty of black people. But that was kind of my academic experience and how it looked for me. Now, by the grace of God, I had my mother, who even though she didn't live with me, of course, but my mother was always in my corner. She would always stay in touch with the guidance counselors. And my mother was a college graduate. She actually has her master's degree. My sister, my stepsister, she has a graduate degree. She went to NC State. My stepdad went to A&T. So I knew people that had gone to college, and I kind of knew that path. Now, the thing that bugged me the most is my mother kept bugging me about where you want to go to college. And then eventually I was like, I don't even know if I want to go to college. So I'm being rebellious, being spoiled, not realizing how, what that really means for your life. But that was my high school experience. And just one more thing here. This is not really academically related, but I really kind of push back on, I don't want to say, let's just say the mainstream to a degree. Because I remember I was, my senior year, I was doing really well. People, everybody knew, people knew the school, teachers liked me. And I got into a fight with a kid, right? Every day I walked down the hall, these teachers would speak to me, I'd speak to them. After that fight, some of those teachers would never even look at me. They wouldn't even give me so that's why I get so, when it comes to people talking about culture and just kind of how things are today, that's what I felt. And that's how I know, that's how I still feel it works a lot of times. If you're black and you're not perfect, if you have any type of flaw, any type of misstep, people look at you a little differently. And the kid that I got in a fight with, right, he came out to me, but we were supposed to be suspended for 3 days. I was like, okay, cool. I'm at home. Well, they let us come back early because he played football. And if we were in school suspension, he could play.
Was he a white kid?
He was. And that's another thing that spoils me on coaches. I saw how the coaches treated black players sometimes and white players. They didn't care about the black players. They just wanted them for what they could do at that point in time. I remember some kids that went to school and got suspended in their senior year because I think they came to school drinking or something, right? And I knew that was going to kill the rest of their opportunities. They were going to have an opportunity. So that's something that, even though it's not academic, but that's the kind of environment I was in, and how I had to kind of climb out of, where a lot of kids climb out of. It's hard, and sometimes you have to humble yourself and say, I just want to get to this point. I just want to pull myself out. That's what you have to do.
No doubt.
So, the fact that I even went to college is almost it's a surprising thing to me when I look back at it, and I ended up going to NC Central first. That's just simply because I just didn't want to stay at a home, at home. I know.
I was gonna say you came out the gate with a B school, but you wound up with an A school.
Yeah.
And look, I know some of the people I met at Central. Some of y'all know, especially I'm not gonna say who, but some of y'all know. But I met some great people at Central. I had my first real girlfriend at Central. I had some great times at Central.
Hey, that's almost like saying some of my best friends are white.
It
Hey, Paul,
Hard on
you were actually at Central for a year, right? A full year?
Like two years. One for 2 years.
So you were at that A&T game where them dudes come running from the top of the rafters to fight.
Yeah, to fight.
Oh,
I was about to.
We all were
try to
there.
get in there.
I was there. I
the three of us were on the floor at that
we were
game.
on the floor when that fight
We were on
happened.
the floor.
I forgot how Paul was with the other team.
Yeah, I was, and look, I was about to try to get in that, man, because I saw people I knew from the dorm that were actually in the middle of it. So I'm like, should I help these boys or should I?
Hey, we got a story about that. I don't know if I want to tell it.
Crazy.
Wow.
That was a crazy night. That was
Crazy night.
Very crazy night.
Look, let's dive into our college experiences while we're at it. I'm going to go ahead and start that off because as I mentioned, I went to Central for 2 years. I had some great experiences at Central. I wasn't really invested in Central. I wasn't even really invested in school. Like I mentioned, I never really was, thought about college that much. I wasn't shooting for a goal, end goal. I'm just trying to take in classes. And I didn't have a major when I first went. So my mother said my second year, she was like, hey, Auntie has a great accounting program. Why don't you come back home and try accounting? I was like, okay, cool. That's not bad. So when there was a difference I saw when I ended up at A&T. And this comes out in especially like Hump and Ken. I remember specifically, especially Hump, but I met the most, and I've said this before, the most driven, professional, intelligent people I've ever met in my life at A&T over just my experiences in general, right? But the first time I saw Hump, I've told this before, and this backstory tells me why he was like this. So we had I think it was a accounting systems class or something where we learned Excel or something, right? And after you took a test, and after the test, like Hump is in the breezeway of the stairs, and he looks like he's about to tear up, like he's about to cry. And I walked by and I saw him. I was like, "This bitch ass bro." He cried. I was like, he cried over a test, right? Now I went to A&T and I'm paying like $600 a semester, right? I have no vision of what I'm going to do. Hump has a vision. He's focused on, he's got a scholarship. He's got something to be tearing up about. I'm just there trying to take in classes, right? But I saw that in so many people at A&T. Kim, I remember when I would see Kim. Kim was the first people I saw in the accounting department was Hump. I think it was Ken, Sean, Kia, Butler, and I think Cynthia Brown. They came into this auditorium, and I was like, first of all, I thought they were all Latino. They were all and I lied to you not.
That's funny. That is hilarious.
Look, I lied to you not. When I saw him, I thought him. I was like, I didn't know that Latinos went to A&T.
And in hindsight,
I seriously thought that.
Look at him.
That makes sense.
I thought this was the Latino contingent. A&T, right?
With Sean Cole, right? So
for sure. But I could see how everybody, they were focused on what they were doing. And I met so many people at A&T that were like that. In terms of social experiences, I remember the first that summer I transferred. I was taking classes. It was me and Rich and a few other people we knew. We were hanging out at A&T. You know, everybody's coming back to school. And I remember we went to the Kappa plot. This was very key. So we're just you got the little walkway there. So Rich is like, I'm walking. Rich is like, hey, don't walk on the sidewalk, man. You can't walk on the sidewalk. I was like, what? It's the public sidewalk. I was like, all right, whatever. But anyway, I remember that clearly. And that's not even a rule. You can walk on the sidewalk.
Right.
But I wasn't even thinking about Cap at that point. None of that stuff. My social life was fine at that point. Wasn't even thinking about Cap. I'm just taking classes. And then when I got into accounting, not something I loved, but it suited me enough. So I just kind of stuck with it. Something I did learn is that before getting to A&T, everything was always me. Just, if you had an assignment, I was doing it by myself. But I started realizing that study groups, it's okay to ask people for help. Study groups became key because colleges, you think, it's easy. It's definitely not easy. Even for the people that are doing well, it's not easy. And there are little tips and tricks like, talking to your professors, doing office hours. Study groups are key. So I learned a lot of those things that have helped me just in general going forward. But, A&T was, again, different from Central in some regards, but there's smart people at both schools. I can't downplay either one, to be honest with you. But A&T there's something about the people that were there, just the level of, I met a lot of people that went to school of science and math. Those people could go pretty much anywhere they want to go. So I just met a lot of people that I learned a lot from when I was in college, even though I wasn't, again, focused on being an executive or having a certain type of job. I think it has helped me in life, that experience, and the people I've met, have helped me. And one thing about, once I got out of college a little bit, I remember it was this first session of my intake class at this business I was getting my first job with. And it's me. It's like there's like a Indian girl. There are no other Black people, of course. And then there's people from like this guy from Kent State, this girl from Iowa. So it's like about 10 of us. And I'm sitting in this what's it called? The initial, training or whatever it is, right? And I'm looking around. They're giving us some work the night before, and we came back and we're kind of going over it. And I'm looking at these people, and I'm like, these people ain't that smart. I mean, they went to good enough colleges, but I was like, they're not that smart. Mm-hmm. I was like, the people I went to school with at A&T are way smarter, right, and they're way more polished.
Hell,
and they're way more driven. I felt like I was at that point. That was the first time where I felt like, dog, this may not be as difficult as people make it out to be.
Yeah.
So I kind of look back and, I could have done so much more. If I'd been a little more driven, or if I'd maybe taken another step, I could have gotten another level. I still don't think that I'm still kind of that kid where I was behind everybody in class a little bit sometimes. Sometimes I still have that, I get that feeling, but
hey, Pete,
I'm just, sure, go ahead.
Do you think that is confidence?
Somewhat, but I'm very understated. So it's not that I feel that all the time, right? I just know that there are people who are more driven than me. There are people who are there are people that are smarter than me for sure, but I don't ever feel like I can't compete. I don't ever feel like I can't be successful. But I kind of know where you have to be comfortable with yourself. And I'm comfortable with myself and where I am. So I'm sure I have.
I'm actually going to do you like I do my clients, because you're not answering my question. You have the confidence, right? Because what I've learned about people, right, and is sometimes some people have talent that is here and confidence that is here.
Right.
And then some people have, and we see them generally as understated or kind of humble or a little bit laid back. Then sometimes we see the other side. We see people that have confidence here in their talent, and those are the people we wish would shut the fuck up sometimes. And most of the time.
Right.
Yeah. So my question is, like, are your two things equal, or is it confident? I mean, how would you say?
I think I have more talent that I utilize for sure. I think I have confidence, but it has to be. I hate to say I don't want to say I don't care, but
it has to move you. It has to be motivating.
Yeah, it's got to be something that kind of moves me. And that's a great point. Hump knows me pretty well.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just not. You know, I'm just that type of person.
I think that progressively gets more play as we get older because the things that you care about start to narrow, and you don't have the capacity to care about all the things that you may have or could have at an earlier stage in life. It's like there are a lot of things that I just walk right by, like I don't care. Like, right. And I probably could contribute, but that's not my calling. That's not what I'm moved to do. And you have to make those decisions. But Ken, back to your point though, you're absolutely right. I mean that I did when I worked for IBM, they had us paired off with executives that did the whole, personality profile, and they would pair you off with someone who was exactly like you, and then they would pair you off with someone who was the exact opposite, right? And I'll never forget, I sat in with the first guy who was the exact opposite, Vince Ostrowski, big sales guy, right? Just arms waving, talking, a lot of confidence. Wasn't the smartest guy, but he had a hell of a lot of confidence and was always on top. And he was VP of the company. Guy who was more like me, Rod Atkins, he was also a VP of the company, went on to become SVP, wound up being one of our frat brothers. And Rod laughed when he came in. He's like, he just bust out laughing. He's like, man, I can understand your entire plight. And he said, I'm the quietest guy in the room 9 times out of 10. He said, but when I do speak, people pause and listen because I'm usually coming with a succinct thought, and it's usually going to move the conversation forward. And he said, so don't ever let your lack of being an A personality and being the loud water pipe in the room dissuade you from being the most confident and being the most persuasive person in the room. He said, because what you want to have is when you do speak, people pause. It's like, okay, yeah, that moves forward. Some of the best advice I've ever had in my life. So I get that 100%.
And see that's what I don't like about corporate America. It just I see when you see that, it just makes you want to say, what the fuck, And I just don't. I don't know. I think
in corporate America, Paul, people feel as though they have to feel important to prove
you see
their
that a
worth.
lot.
Oh yeah, every day.
Yeah.
But I'm like, Hump, I don't have aimless, idle chit chat. That's not who I am. Mm-hmm. If it's something that I deem trivial, I don't even comment. It's and this is gonna sound terrible, but it's not worth my time. It's not worth my thought.
Yep.
But if it's a value, I'm gonna add to the value and keep it moving. I don't like aimless time and idle chit chat, right? Keep it moving. Yep. I'm going home at 5:00.
For sure. Now, one more thing I want to add in on my college experience is joining Kappa. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that because that's how I know, most of the people on this podcast for sure. And I didn't join a fraternity for social acceptance. I realized a lot of people do. I didn't. It was actually kind of on a whim. I remember they had the interest meeting, and my mom happened to tell me, "Oh, they got an interest meeting, right?"
Your
so
mom?
I was like, "Okay." Yeah, my mom told me. So, and I had an uncle.
I'm curious.
How? You tell me. I have a cousin that's a Kappa. I've got a couple of two of my uncles are Kappas, but she was like, "Yeah, that Kappa's like, okay." I was like, "All right, cool," because my cousin is local and he's Alpha Nu, so maybe he told me. But so I went to the interest meeting. just kind of like just to go, and didn't really even know a whole lot about the whole process, all that stuff. So I remember at Central, a couple of guys that were in the dorm with me, they pledged, and that was when you could, when you were underground or, so they would get to come in the caf and do their stuff or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's dope. That's cool. But once I got to T, and I went to the interest meeting, I got lucky. I don't know how it happened. So once you go to the interest meeting at that point, you give me information, and then you get a call back to get an interview. And I didn't think about it much. And then somebody called me and said, "Hey, did you get a call back?" I was like, "Nah." And then I was like, "Well, shit, I'm a good guy. I get a call back." So within the next couple of days, I did get a call back. Right. So I was like, okay. So I went to the interview, and then after that, you wait a while, and that's where I ended up meeting Hump. I don't think I'd ever seen Hump before. Sean, I went to middle school with one of my line brothers. I met a lot of guys before, but joining the fraternity changed, I don't say turn things, but changed things, because fraternity sorority life and non-fraternity sorority life is different. It is definitely different. I remember the day after we went over, this is something I didn't expect. It kind of affects me to this day. Like I would walk to class every day. You see same people sometimes every day. Nobody speaks to you. They just walk past you, right? So guys, girls, everybody. So the day after we went over, and I really did not expect this. I told my wife about this too. Everybody is speaking to you. Everybody and their mother knows you. And I thought that was very weird, personally. Because if I like you, I'm speaking to you no matter what. But now, just because I'm in this organization, people are speaking to me, and girls are looking at you like, hey, and guys are, they're trying to dap you up. And I just thought that was weird. I thought that was the weirdest thing for me to deal with. So from that point forward, in my college experience, you couldn't really go anywhere or do anything without somebody knowing it, which was, I just didn't expect that. I didn't expect that. And even to this day,
really good guy.
You done things different?
No, because what I've learned what I've learned from just other members of the fraternity, my line brothers, is invaluable information. The things I've been privy to in terms of even the business world. I remember when I was Dow Perry went to Michigan State and got his Michigan. Michigan. That's right. And got his MBA. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the conversations that were around that and the atmosphere that put him in. And I saw Hump them do the same, do the same thing, Ken and just seeing that and knowing that those are doors that are open, ways to dress. Derek Holland told me about wearing shirts under my undershirt or no, under my dress shirt. Wear a t-shirt, or not wearing short sleeve shirts with dress pants. Stuff like that. So I learned a lot of things just in the frat, and just the brotherhood is invaluable. So if a young person wants to join a fraternity, I think it's a great thing. All that stuff about that people talk about fraternities now, I think is a lot of it's just mess. I
think we collectively often underestimate or undervalue, I should say, that we are still becoming who we are going to be at that age. Mm-hmm. Right? There's so much that we don't know, and there's so much that we're still learning. And that's why it's so important that you are around people who are going to help you grow and are going to help you, are going to compliment you with the things that you don't know about. I learned a ton. Like I said, I'm a country boy from Kingsville, North Carolina. And I'm up there, freshman year, Ken and I were roommates, and Ken just, thinking about the cats that we met on the halls as a start. You had two hooligans from New York down the hall who were cool as the other side of the pillow, and always had your back, but they weren't the best ones you wanted to hang out with academically. Right. But you got that social side that you needed, and you learned some stuff from them. Then you had your boys across the hall. They were our boys, and they brought something to the table, but academically we wasn't leaning on them because they wasn't going to class, right? Everybody has something. And to your point, even to the point when you get to the fraternity around, now you start to understand a little bit more about the business side of things, right? And how to conduct yourself and how you have a spotlight on you. And all that stuff feeds in. To your point, you see a lot of negative stuff around it now. And some places and some chapters that you do have that. But I think collectively, most organizations still have that ability to uplift and to complement what anyone would bring to the table. And that's why Paul, you mentioned seeing that click, that accounting click was so freaking tight, man. It was amazing how many hours we spent together, predominantly studying or socializing / studying. But we all got better because of it. And I wouldn't have made it out of A&T. I wouldn't have made it out of accounting without that crew. There's no way I'd have made it out of accounting without that crew. And there's something that we all brought to the table in the diversity of who we were as people. And still learning from, as you taught, thankfully, majority, all of us are still cool. And every time you have a conversation, it's still enlightening and still something to add on to what you have. So the thing that scares me, as having freshmen in college now, the thing that scares me is that, they're not building that network, and they spend so much time in dorm rooms, all of them. They have everything they need. They have the electronics, they have the gaming, they don't really need to be out socializing. Right? They have air conditioning, they have heat.
Right.
Why wouldn't you stay in? So what you mentioned around the people that you met and how that added on to who you were, Rich, even the comments you made about South Carolina State and the people that you met and how that built on, it matters, man. And anybody who think they can go down this road and do it by themselves, I don't care how smart you are, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, and that's why I owe a lot to Hump and Quake. And then, I can see myself, having gone to A&T and just focus on school, dating some chick, and getting through on to career. I'm such a better person because of these two, my brothers on this call, and what they exposed me to, from that to our boys who were boys before we were Kappas, to Kappa, to all. I think about now my ability to network. For example, I laugh Quake at your thing around chit chat, because that's the way I was when we were in A&T. Chit chat,
right?
I don't know him. What? Right? and that was kind of my net personality, right? It wasn't like watching y'all and trying to keep up with y'all forced me to eventually try to do it. And it wasn't until I became much older that I even got good, right? And I think what we sometimes underestimate is kind of the personality differences, almost like you just describe, right? Some of us are more interested, right? Some of us even have like trust issues around getting too close to people and all that shit, right? And so when you don't have, folks who you trust that in many ways can walk you into these kind of networks, it can be really difficult, right? Mm-hmm. And I owe a lot to the Hump and Quake, because they were always big and social. Like you talk about the day with devices. Can you imagine? You guys know me. Can you imagine my personality then in a world today? I I've just been in a room. I just been in a room texting whoever I was supposed to date. What time we connected, and that's it, right? I would have never done anything of fun. You know what I mean? I would have never.
No. But
my core network.
You've gotten better at that, Ken. I had a discussion about that yesterday. You're self-aware, right? you know that about you, and you've been more intentional. Personally, from a family perspective, right? Your drive keeps you so laser sharp focused that was your intent. But over the last 10 years, you've evolved, right? You take time, you take the opportunity to pour into your kids. Like when you were mentioning about entrepreneurship and how we should take a vested interest in that at the School of Business. You've done that with your kids, right? So you've leveraged the professional aspects have spilled over into your personal life, that you've shared that with your family, and you've grown and evolved with your social aspect and being more intentional about having downtime and making that an integral part of your life. So don't sell yourself short on that, brother. You've definitely evolved.
Absolutely.
Big
And
time.
and Ken, you mentioned the social side. Quake was a social dude, man. Quake, I got what I got from him because I to this day, I'm probably still an introvert. It's an interesting dynamic mix between my dad and my mom. My mom is pretty quiet and pretty low key. My dad was kind of like a rah-rah dude, right? So I have a little bit of both, but I lean more towards the quiet, the more introvert side. And hanging with Quake, you can't be in that box. You can't. I mean, now you talk about evolution. Quake is a lot more cerebral now than he was back then.
Oh God, yeah.
But back then, I mean, you couldn't hang around that dude and sit in the box. They be looking at you like, what's wrong with your boy? You know? So why
And I was that dude. I was the one like,
looking dumbfounded?
what's up with the little ugly dude over there? Why he over there? Like, who's that dude?
Right.
So
But you just used to pull it out of him, huh?
Well, I've been a little risque, Rich.
You got it from your dad a lot,
and you can
right?
interpret that in however sense you want. But I will tell you, and Hump, I mentioned this on the call last week. I developed some skills very early, and I used them to manipulate things. And
so I missed out on some good parties.
It worked. I mean, to the point where I could work a room and be like, Ken, she's into you. She's gonna leave with you tonight, and she would leave with him that night.
We used to call her Nostradamus.
I had a.
You know, remember back in the day, Ali was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna knock him out in the third round."
Yeah, that's Quake.
Like Ali, Notre Dame, he would just call shit, right?
Yep.
Call his shot.
That's the type of I bet people at A&T with that type of skill set in different areas. So whether it was with the ladies or it was in math or it was in engineering, it's people that are kind of savants. Like Quake is a savant in that.
But like, it's a negative too, right? And here's my take on that. So during those days, I didn't think that I had the interest of the fraternity, because I felt as though my personal skills could afford me the same opportunities that the fraternity could. Gotcha. But in retrospect, I was dead wrong, because I missed out on what Hump was saying with regards to the other opportunities of personal growth, because I didn't have a collective group. I had these guys, I had you guys, but I didn't have the core foundation that you guys got at 21, 22. I developed that much later. Mm-hmm. And I see the value, and I was just talking about this at Providence Council meeting a couple of weeks ago, the value of being in a room with 300 like-minded men, and the value of focus of family, of religion, of education, mm-hmm. of putting your place into a space where you have mentorship and growth. And that's one of the things that I admire about the Alpha Nu chapter with regards to the retreat. I don't know if the young guys get it, but where else could they have that wealth of information, knowledge, and mentorship at their disposal?
Yeah.
And I don't know if they fully embrace it and even know it at this point, right?
Yeah.
But where else can you get that at their ages?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
We talked about iron sharpening iron and how that collective competition works. I think a lot of the things I've been able to do were just strictly on not wanting to, disappoint or fail and disappoint anyone who had invested time in me. Right.
right.
Alpha Nu was hard, bro. I mean, we were hard on each other. There was a lot of love, but we were hard on each other from a standpoint of if you were low, you were going to get kicked, and until you raised the bar back up where nobody was like messing with you. So I was like, I don't ever want to be kicked low. I don't want to ever have anybody like kicking me out of whatever or doing, something that is going to discredit this chapter, this fraternity, and then myself and the people who have poured into me. And that was the same way with the academic side. That was the same way, anything that we did that was kind of competitive. You didn't want to be the weak person who disappointed someone who had taken the time to invest some time in you. So it matters, man. It matters. And again, this is what part of that overall college experience is supposed to be about. These are the things you're growing. You are growing as a person. You're still not who you're going to be. And even when you get 40 years old and 45 and 50, you're still evolving. But if you have that foundation of things that you can pull from that are early in your development years, it matters a lot. It matters a lot.
Absolutely. It really does, right? Because sometimes, we had an episode weeks ago about education, right? And man, I've been exposed to a lot of kind of education / learning and development. I mean, that's my day job. And the thing, I've been on a board for years now, the board chair. And the thing I've learned about being around from folks who live and breathe education is that it's not about grades. It's not about the job you can get. It's not about. It's about human flourishing, right? It's about how do you, as someone who enrolls, right? Whether you're like a 5-year-old or 3-year-old in pre-K, or a 18-year-old kind of rolling off to college, or even someone who's going to an advanced degree. It is about how you start the process of being better and what that system is around you to make you better. And what I think in many ways what we're talking about, whether it's the Alpha Nu part, the accounting part, the business part, you saw what we all felt, what we kind of some of us had coming into it. It's all about like how we grow as humans, right? How we get closer every day to our potential. And I'm so indebted to A&T in this community because it has prepared me in a way that I just could not have, asked any more of, right? And if you think about what we paid for our education, and the people we've met, the things we've gone on to do, it's just been an absolute blessing. Right. Yes. To be way more I know the word we use is academics, but I feel like, boy, I have become the best part of me because of all the stuff I was exposed to.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. For sure. Yep. And something I want to add to just kind of to the conversation for just a second is for those young people that may be unsure that they want to finish college or they can make it through, that they may be able to make it through. You will thank yourself in the end if you continue to push through. It's going to pay off more than what you put into it. I know they talk about nowadays. Well, you spend $50,000, $100,000, and you get a job making $20,000. Well, you need to pick the right major. If you look at it from that perspective, but you're going to be a more polished person, I think, when you leave college, if you can make it through and get your degree. You know, Rich, give us some of your college experience. You know, you kind of fade out in the background. We're talking about all the frat stuff, but go ahead and tell us about your college experience and what you feel. I know you said that, you know, you felt like you wish you could have gone to the military. I can almost tell you for sure that you are a more well-rounded individual just by going to A&T, just by going to college. But what do you feel? What's your
I don't disagree with that. Now, I don't want it to come across that I didn't enjoy the college experience. As I had stated earlier, we went to South Carolina. I went to South Carolina. Ken Free and I, we both went to South Carolina State for a semester. We came back. I stayed on campus in that spring of '90. Scott Hall. Great experience. Made some friends there. I was adamant about trying out for football. But I want to tell this story about my experience with Scott Hall. I had always heard like sometimes you could end up. Can you guys see me? It looks like my head is cut off. My iPad went dead.
Yeah, you need to pull it up just a little bit, Rich. Angle up.
All right, I'm gonna just hold it. So you know, I moved into my room in Scott Hall, and I didn't have a roommate. There wasn't anybody there. So 1 week goes by. I'm like, yes. Another week goes by. I'm like, yes. And then like a day later, I come in and this dude is moving in. And I made one of the worst mistakes. You know, when you're trying to be cordial and friendly, the guy comes in and he says, "Do you mind if I smoke?" And I said no.
Wow.
That whole semester, I would wake up at 3 and 4 in the morning with him. The room was a cloud.
Wait. What was he smoking?
Yeah, that's my next question.
It was cigarettes.
What was he
smoking?
Cigarettes.
Okay, it was cigarettes. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. Hey, the other would have been a problem at 3 and 4 in the morning. Every night.
It would have been.
But I'd have been floating though, right? So that was one of the bad experiences. But, you know, I had a dream of trying to play ball. I wasn't realistic, even though I had hit my growth spurt. You know, I rode the pine in high school. The only reason I got to play was because somebody got suspended. So the connection wasn't made. You know, sometimes when you have a dream, you have blinders. I wasn't realistic, but I went out that spring. And I should have realized in that moment that nothing was coming of it, right? But it is what it is. I'm sharing this story so you have an idea of, you know, I talked about military as an option, but there is something to be said about chasing a dream. So I went out, spring game came and went, you know, that was the game. I think that might have been Alan Hooker's last time out there. You know how they would have the old heads play. That dude was tearing us up. Now I say us, but I didn't get on the field. But anyway, so after that transpired, you know, they had the C5 frat. So I did do C5, Paul. I do have that fraternity.
I remember that.
Brotherhood.
I didn't forget that.
So coach is looking for me. I'm not on campus. I got sick. Teammates are telling me, "Hey, Coach Hayes wants to see you. Coach Hayes wants to see you." I'm like, whatever. He don't want to see me. No, Free, you need to go see him. So I go over to the offices over there at Corbett, and I get in this room, and there's this big board table, and they welcome me in, and Coach Hayes is in there. Some other coaches are in there. This O-line coach, I'll never forget, is sitting at the other end of the table. And they're like, you know, Hayes thought I was Ken Free Sr.'s son. Ken Free Sr. was the commissioner of the MEAC at the time. Right. So I think he was giving me more deference than he didn't know I was his nephew. So he's sitting there and he's like, Free, I really appreciate you coming out. You really showed a lot of heart. But this ain't gonna work out. We don't think it's gonna work out. So I'm like, but coach, I'm gonna work out real hard this summer. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And the coach just at the other end of the table, he goes, damn, you don't understand. You will never be a D1 athlete.
Oh shit!
Oh my God!
Oh god!
I went just like that in a matter of seconds.
Man. Oh man!
So they were like, "But we'd love for you to be our film man."
Oh man!
And in retrospect, that was my moment. That was a moment directly from God that I did not grab. I told them yes. But this is another example of why mentors are so valuable, right? If I had a mentor, if I had somebody who had it together to have the foresight to help me with my vision for life, they would have said, eat your humble pie. And when they call you, you be ready. Because I'd probably be coaching somewhere now. I got a decent vocabulary. Hell, I coached my son's little league football teams to 2 championships. We only won 1, but I coached them straight to championships. But
Coach Hayes gonna see if you see this.
I don't know. What's wrong with that boy? No, Coach Hayes. All love. I learned so much in that experience. But so the film guy calls me and he says, "Hey, we trying to see if you're ready." And I said, I had some choice words. I said, "Don't you call here again." Now that was my way of paying back for the. You will never be a D1 athlete.
Didn't see the opportunity for the fire that you had.
Yeah, because again, my vision, I didn't have a plan B. My vision was I'm gonna play pro football. And now you look back, you got defensive back coaches at SEC getting 6 figures. What? Backpedal, son, backpedal. I mean, I could have done that. Anyway, so hey, hindsight's 2020, right? The other things about college, I mean,
hey, can I say something about that real quick? That story is not as uncommon as people think. A lot of kids, like my son is one. They go to college and they're all about ball, right? Because every player thinks they go into the league, right? And then they may get an opportunity, they may not get an opportunity, but they don't have a plan B. They don't realize that, hey, I'm in this environment. Well, I can actually make something out of my life that's going to take me much further than playing these 4 years. But go ahead, Rich. I think that was a great story because I think it applies to a lot more people than you realize.
Yeah, I really wish I'd have seized the moment, but I lean into Romans 8:28 that all things come together for good for those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So, I'm encouraged by moments that I make mistakes and don't see things for what they are. But academics weren't that great. I got out of there by the skin of my chinny chin chin. My dad convinced me to move out of the dorm so he wouldn't have to pay that. And he told me he was going to cover rent for me, but he didn't. So I was working 2 jobs.
Right.
And I don't know. Well, I know how I got out of there. It was God. Somebody prayed. And Ken Free Jr. had a huge hand in helping me. That dude helped me focus to get it done. Like, I don't think I would have finished had I not had. He was my roommate or housemate. And then, I got to tell this story. Okay. So my dad is an Omega. Was an Omega.
He still is.
Yeah. Okay. So Ken always wanted to be a Kappa. Now he'll deny the story, but he convinced me. He's like, please go with me to the interest meeting, Rich. go with me to the interest meeting, Rich. I was not interested in being a Kappa. If I was going to do it, it was going to be a Q.
That was the 91 meeting, yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll go. Now, Rich has one suit and one tie. Y'all want to know what color the tie was?
Purple.
Purple.
That's right.
And I go into the Kappa interest meeting with a purple tie on, and they ripped me a new one.
Supposed to.
They gave me, and I'm looking at Ken afterward. I'm like, I told you I didn't need to go up in here with this tie. He's like, don't worry about that. They not worried about that.
Like, man, just go back home, right?
Let me ask you this: was it a soft, subtle voice that told you, or was it somebody screaming at you? Because I could probably tell you who it was.
Man, I don't think it was soft. It wasn't no soft stuff.
Hey, don't feel
bad. They were bringing the heat.
Don't feel bad. That same smoker.
They were bringing the heat.
That same smoker, Rich. I showed up because I had a blue suit, but it hadn't been tailored yet. And so I didn't want to go in there and tailor it. So I rolled up to the smoker with my shiny gray snake shark skin suit. And Jimmy Jones said, yeah, you're not going to be able to get in the room with that suit on. You might want to go put a business suit on.
Oh, wow. Oh, man.
I drove back to the dorm, parked on the strip, went up to the room. I was living in Cooper, went up to the 4th floor, put on that suit, put some safety pins in the hems and the pants.
There you go.
Got a ticket for parking on the strip.
Oh, my goodness.
And drove back to the smoker with a daggone non-fitting blue suit on.
And I can imagine how your hands were trembling while you put the safety pins in because you had the energy flowing through you. You were rushing and
everything.
Probably kicked the ankles a couple times.
Yeah. Brother, you wanted to be a Kappa.
Hey, man. Hey, that was hilarious. That was Jimmy. I'd never get you. Brother, you are not going to enter the room with that. You want to go to a real business and you didn't want to come back. And then I think I actually heard it say, and you might not get back you might not be able to get in when you come back.
Word to the wise, get yourself a black or gray suit for college.
Absolutely.
With some neutral colors. You never know when you might need it.
That's right.
You got it.
Great example of a lesson learned.
Yeah.
Pay off for life, man. I don't know how many times I've seen people in business settings that had no idea about how to dress for an occasion. That's something you learn in college for sure. You'll learn that
for sure.
Yeah.
My kid's gonna get that as a graduation present. 3 suits.
Oh, that's nice.
Black, gray, and brown.
Right.
You're gonna need all 3.
That's right.
Oh, and the thing about college, there was no option. I had to finish, but it did help that I had somebody like Ken. I can remember not knowing if I had everything I needed to graduate. It was that bad, guys. And Ken sat down and pointed out everything for my major. Because I started off when I got to T, mechanical engineering, they weeded me out pretty quickly. And I switched to the transportation degree. So I saw all of y'all in merit.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know. I think that's it. I just, the path that I'm on or the path that I was on with the transportation degree, I was working so much. I didn't take the time to get to know the right people. Paul, y'all dropped those nuggets. It is invaluable to go see the administrators of your major. Mm-hmm. Go see the career counselors. It goes a long ways in networking and becoming chummy with the right people. Because there were people that I was helping with assignments that when we graduated, I was hearing about them getting all these wonderful jobs. And I was like, but from a maturity aspect, I wasn't ready, even if I got any of those. I just wasn't ready. I had so many other things going on. So It is what it is.
That's a very valid point too. I am constantly saying, get to know your professors, get to know your counselors, get to know your advisors, get to know any administrator that you can. Tell them who you are, tell them where you're from, tell them what your major is, and try to give them something that will remember. They will remember your name when they hear it again, or they remember an opportunity that they can associate with your name.
Exactly. I mean, college is a how much is a college investment? I didn't mean to cut you off. How much?
No, you're good. You're good.
I mean, you spend thousands of dollars to get a piece of paper that says you're qualified. You better take advantage of every single aspect.
Yes.
And the people who are getting contacted by these organizations, these businesses, they need to have you on the top of their mind.
That's right.
So it's funny that we're on that topic. I told my boys, both of them need some leadership opportunities. Miles is a junior, Matt's a freshman, and I told them if they didn't do anything this summer, I was going to enroll them into God, what's the name of the program now? God, it slips my mind.
Toastmasters or Inroads?
Toastmasters.
And then both of them have accepted. Both of them have been recommended to do. Is it Anytown Leadership Camp? So they're both going this summer. So because I'm adamant about it, and I'm probably so overzealous because, again, you see the opportunities and you know what's at stake.
Yep.
And they never stop to think about the level of competition that they're going to encounter. And I want them to be prepared.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes.
That Toastmasters is priceless, brother.
Absolutely.
It's priceless.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned in kind of being an advisor and a coach to executives is how much we underestimate what people don't know, right? And just kind of fundamental things, right? Think about Hump, your story of wearing kind of the wrong suit to the smoker, right? We all there was someone who probably said like, now how the hell he know damn well he wasn't supposed to wear that kind of suit,
Right.
And if you think about it, there are moments we see that as adults. Well, our kids, they're being constantly exposed to things for the first time.
Yeah,
we know it, right? The one thing that has become more apparent to me as I've watched my kids who are now 25 and 23 is that we should never stop coaching them, right? We should never, because everybody needs coaching.
Amen.
Person that needs coaching to reach their full potential.
Amen.
And I get asked a lot, like, "Hey, you're an empty nester now. You kind of really, you're really never not. You're really never empty, because if you do it right, they allow you to give them advice because they damn sure need it, right? And I just think it is invaluable to lean in like you're doing, Quake, and telling the boys and getting it, because sometimes it's left to our own devices. Not that we don't have the initiative, but we just don't know. They're kids, right? Just like how much shit we don't know that we should in our 50s, right? And so, to the extent, I think the best thing that we learned, Allison and I were talking about this, all the stuff we have done to help our kids get through their academics and stuff, it is, we got them coaches when they were in like middle school that coached them all the way through high school. And these were academic coaches. They had coaches for their athletics too. They had like human coaches, teach them how to be better, right?
Nice.
Right.
And they have, and I think they're so good today because not all what we did, but what she put in their heads. Shit that we thought they should say, and they would never hear it coming from us. But they listened to her because she knew how. She was a pro at telling them what they needed to do, right? And so I think I talked to parents today. I was like, if as much as you can, if you can't do anything from get them some type of coach that will help them with leadership, with all the stuff that rounds them out, because no matter how eloquent your voice, you're their parent, they're going to stop listening to you.
Amen.
It's the same as if you were an athlete, Rich, when you were coaching your son through basketball. There's a point where you couldn't reach him no more.
Exactly.
When you were coaching your son in football, same thing. There's a point that you can only go so far, right? Yep. And so I highly recommend that, because I think we all the stuff we talk about we didn't get and we didn't know, same thing for them. But if we're in position to do something about it, then we should.
Absolutely.
And I'll touch on that a little bit too, Ken. I think I always say that even if you're constantly putting it out there for them, you are still the parent, right? And you hopefully they're capturing the 20% that you think they can get and understand and comprehend. And that other 80%, you're kind of hoping that's sitting back there dormant, that when they come to that position where, oh yeah, I remember Dad told me about that. I remember Mom told me about that. But what I'm also noticing now is the evolution of a more active ear, and a more active conversation when you have that dialogue. There's some input, there's some feedback, there's some acknowledgement, there's some relevant points that matter. I say that to encourage everyone to don't feel like it's going into an empty hole, or they ain't listening, they don't listen. Even when they're not listening, they're kind of getting it, right?
Enjoy the vibe.
That constant feeding into them eventually starts to pay off. Even with my youngest, some of the things we push back on, baseball related or academically, you start to see it evolve. You start to be receptive to it. And, it's golden not when you see the change, but when they see the change.
Amen.
Perfect. All right. Any other input on college life at this point?
Anybody? Can I add one more note, right? Because I was looking at my notes and help attest to this. Because the other thing I don't want to. One of the question was it worth it? And I think we kind of said A&T wasn't worth it. A&T was worth it. But the other thing, and I think Hump and Quake will agree, because all three of us have advanced degrees, right? That sometimes people don't give a whole lot of value to that shit, right? But that has been invaluable to all of us, right? And I don't want to speak for Hump and Quake, but I've watched them and know what, like, Hump and I were classmates at Kellogg, so I know what it did for him. Quake and I talked a lot as he was going through the program, and he was doing, and we all did it. So some people think it's like expensive and all that. It is, right? But you put your mind to it, you can figure out how to continue to improve and get educated, right?
Absolutely.
Because all three of us did it three very different ways. Hump did it full time. I did it younger and worked on a day. Quake did it older and worked, right? And still, so there's ways, but education and learning and development, and I'm not here to tell you what that looks like for you. You got to figure that out yourself, work with some other folks to try to get there. But boy, and by the way, it doesn't always have to be in like traditional schools, like Rich said last week, whether it's to get in a trade or whatever it is. But don't think you know everything. You don't. So learning, development, more education, and whatever it is. I don't know too many people who have done something like that and said, "Boy, that was a complete waste of time, and it didn't help me."
Well, right. I think even post-graduate school, learning is a never-ending process, right?
Absolutely.
And you have to be dedicated to the task of self-improvement all the time. I mean, I'm reading several books right now, and they're all leadership based. They're all, on the premise of honing your skills to become a better leader. But I do it with regards to, I've come to terms that I'm going to work at least 10 more years. So that's got to be a progression, right? I don't want to be in the same seat in 10 years. So if I'm going to get there, it's a constant work in motion to get there. And I think that's an issue with a lot of people. You get this advanced degree and you become complacent. Bro, everybody has them now. Yeah. We're all lobbying for the same spot, just no more spots created. So the sharper you are, the more closely related to the opportunities and skill set that people are looking for.
And I'll add that even to your point, Quay, you were saying even after your postgraduate continue to develop, I would say even after an undergraduate degree, that development piece is out there. I love to come across folks who have a thirst for knowledge, all right, and just thirsty to learn more and ask questions and want to learn more about stuff. I mean, you will never hear anyone walk away from a conversation about something that they love when you ask them, hey, how did you do this? Or can you tell me a little bit more about it? If they like what they're doing, they're going to talk about it. And then you ask them how they got to where they are in their career, they're going to talk about it because they're willing to share what they have learned. And I had this conversation with one of my boys, Javar, and I used to talk about how we had to grind a lot of times coming up the ladder and what we were been able to do. He's gone on to do some great things as a leader. And we came along where our mentors that looked like us sometimes didn't always provide the right information that we needed to make the right decisions.
Right.
And most of it was out of fear of retribution if we messed it up, right? That it would reflect badly upon them. But we've kind of evolved a little bit where we're in a position now where if you mess it up, that's kind of on you. I'm gonna give you what you need, and I'm gonna tell you what your pitfalls are and what you need to look out for. But if you still do that, that's going to be a reflection on you. And I'm not worried about me. And I think some of the best conversations I've had with folks who have asked me those questions is just a real conversation. They always come back and, hey, I appreciate you giving me the real, not the BS, because it's been I hate to even say it, but we've been behind the 8 ball for years because the other side was sharing that information and taking care of folks and advancing folks, whether they were qualified or not. But yet we were holding back information that could have been helpful for someone who had that same career trajectory because of the talent that they had. So never stop looking and thirsting for that information and growth and knowledge, because it's always going to be out there, and 9 times out of 10 it's going to distinguish you more and put you at a higher level than the person sitting next to you.
Absolutely, brother. Well said. Well said.
Yep. And one more thing I want to point out here. I think it was a great point that you guys mentioned how you got your graduate degrees. The college journey isn't the same for everybody, right? Undergraduate, graduate. There are many ways to get there. Maybe you've got to go to community college for a couple of years, or like Hump. You it would be remiss if we didn't mention you actually ended up in an officers program with the military that helped you pay for school and afforded you other opportunities. So
that's right.
The college journey everybody's journey doesn't look the same. For those kids that might be thinking about, taking another route, you're going to have to learn no matter what you do, whether you go to college or whether you just go get a job. You're going to have to learn. It's part of being successful in any regard. So Amen. I would say the college route I personally think the college route is the easier route you can take, even though it's tough. That real world is hard to step into, immediately. It's hard to step into. And, the people that you meet is a different learning experience. So I think college is a great way to go. But if you choose not to go to college, if you choose not to finish, just focus on accomplishing, growing in whatever field that you decide to enter into, and don't give up. But you're going to have to learn no matter what.
I think there's a part too, Paul, that I've heard a lot of kids, they think that success is just one roadmap, right? There's so many different roadmaps to success, and success is personally what you deem to be. It is. It's not what other people put values on. And the career ladder can be whatever you want it to be. And if it suits you and your family and your lifestyles and meets what you deem to be appropriate, that's successful, right? It doesn't have to be six figures. It doesn't have to be the corner office. It can be what you want it to be.
Right.
And I
certain car, certain house, all that.
Yeah, I look at some of the younger folks, and we've all heard it. I hear it from my kids all the time. Uncle Ken's got a Range Rover.
Right.
Uncle Anthony's got an Escalade. You know, I'm like,
right.
yeah, a lot of people have those things. But I'm like, you got to dig a little deeper than that.
Right? Society, man. I mean, everyone who said it? Everyone wants the end result, or something to the effect. They want the end result, but they don't want the grind. They fall in love with the fame, but they don't fall in love with the grind to get there.
That's right.
And everyone's grind is different. And 9 times out of 10, the majority of folks who have those quote things don't really care about them. That's not what's important to them, right? It's
and
just another thing.
That's the beauty of it.
Yep.
They have no
everybody want to be inward until it's time to be inward. I'm gonna cut that out, by the way. I just wanted to say it.
Anyway, right now everybody wants to be a YN.
YN, there you go. I'm gonna cut that out. I just wanted to say it, just to say it.
Hey, and Redman said, if you want to be a monkey, be a motherfucking gorilla.
For sure.
Damn right.
A silverback at that.
A silverback.
Well, look, let's go ahead and jump into our closing thoughts here. So our little 2 minutes of whatever you want to discuss. So Rich, why don't you go ahead and jump in first? First person I looked at. So.
I didn't have anything prepared for it tonight, but I guess I could talk about a organization that I've been put in charge of at the church. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie The Forge, but we have created our own little group at our church called Swords and Daggers with the same intent. And it's been rewarding to me to try to be in a role of a big brother type mentorship to young males. As you know, in my opinion, our community is in a state of crisis. We joked just a moment ago about 2 letters that describe a lot of the stuff that goes on in our community, where young men are not given the proper direction and guidance, and I think that it's a scenario where we've got an opportunity on our watch, because we have reached a level of life success where, if you're not bogged down with the parental aspect, if you have time, you can get involved and do things. If you're a parent of young men, and like it was said earlier, we said that we never stop coaching them, right? But if they're on that level where you're not having to be with them on a daily basis, look into the possibilities of being involved with other organizations that would give you an opportunity to help somebody, who is actually asking for it. Those scenarios you can't beat, like the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, where they're actually reaching out, asking for somebody to lead them. But I'm kind of just going on and on. I'm just excited about what is taking place at our church with our Swords and Daggers young men, and we meet every 3rd Saturday, and we just go over different topics. One day we just spent time on a handshake and what it means, and the importance of a firm handshake, looking a man in the eye, speaking clearly, what it means to just carry yourself in a distinct way. I'm sure soon we'll probably do what's your elevator speech, things of that nature that helps a young man to tap into his purpose. And it's obviously with God in mind. So just mentioning that.
It's awesome.
That's pretty much it.
Yes.
Thanks.
It's beautiful.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
Ray, Quake, you want to jump in?
I don't know where I can start this week, man. I hadn't given a lot of thought. I think I did mention last week I was excited about my son and his journey to explore opportunities for college. He's on another tour as we speak. So this is the second one, and well, it's 4 schools this week. It was 1 last week, and I'm just excited about his future. Right? I know as a parent, man, it's bittersweet to watch him grow, but it's beautiful to me to watch them blossom into who they're becoming. And I've taken a back seat to kind of some of these things because I don't want to be overbearing with my thoughts and what I believe he should be or where he should go and what he should do. But watching him matriculate the process, having him to ask the questions while we were at Howard last week, and make him forge his own path, man. That's exciting to me. You equip them with these tools and information while they're here, and then you watch them grow and blossom into whatever God has them to be. And I'm excited for this kid, man. Just watching them grow into it, man, is beautiful. I think my wife and I are. She's a little apprehensive. That's her baby, but I'm excited for him.
Amen.
All my kids, I'm excited for them. Just to watch them grow and get off my bill for one. I'm looking forward to that part, but just it's a beautiful world out there, man, and I want them to carve their own niche into it and develop and grow to what they want to be.
Amen.
All right. Ken?
Yeah, P, I think I'll use mine to kind of put a bow on this academics conversation, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I hope that for anyone who gets a view and this gets to some young people, and hopefully you've taken away from, kind of part 1 and part 2 of going through our story a bit, which was the intent. I think for the parents who are thinking about it as with those folks is it kind of talk about, schools, right, and educating your kids, right. I think there's 3 things that everybody got to think about, and I think 2 of them is kind of innate to us when we start thinking about educating our kids. Number 1 is the academic quality, like what in whatever measure they use, how good is the education of the school, and that's really important. Number 2 is the cost implications, right. You're going to generally get certainly more, certain Ivy Leagues, if it's college or even privacy, those kind of things. So cost always matters, and we always have to navigate that. But the third component sometimes that we miss, and we in this case is Black folks, so we have to understand the social impacts of what schools we send to our kids, right? Because what we've displayed for you is that we all came together, and the social aspects kind of bound with the fact that we had costs that we can afford, and we got great kind of educations, but it was the social that made us connect that took us. And in many cases, that social aspect didn't only help us while in the moment and working together, it also prepared us for when we left A&T and went into the other aspects, right? Paul talked great about stepping in, seeing other kids and saying how like the folks at A&T were just as smart. I had this similar experience, and I never underestimate how important it is to kind of reach your full self, because socially you were in a place that allowed you to step forward, right? And as parents, we got to think about that and support that, just like we do thinking about the quality of the education and how much it costs us, right? And those three components generally the difference in our overall readiness for what we do long after we're finished school.
Excellent.
Amen.
Hump?
Amen.
Hump?
Yeah, I'll jump in and I'll continue on the theme. I had a chance to break bread with my twins who were freshmen at A&T this past weekend, and it's always cool to be in Greensboro and get them to a meal off campus before you break out of town. But I touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's amazing to me now that some of the questions that are being asked because of the semester and a half, almost 2 semesters that they've had at A&T, and I think it would apply to any undergraduate setting, but the dynamics change and the conversations change. The questions that are asked change. The information that's shared changes, and it's the first revelation that I've had. I thought we had crossed a hurdle coming out of high school, but I wasn't prepared for some of the things we were going to talk about this past weekend. And the random phone calls in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, and you're talking an hour, and it's like, wow, it touches you. It really hits you deep because you see what you poured into it. And to Rich, to your point, Ray, your point, Ken, your point, all the stuff that you do, whether it's your kids or someone else, I think about the impact that my Cary alumni chapter is having in the Capital League and some of the kids we're developing there and the leadership that we're providing for those kids. I think about some of the informal things that you do. Some of our friends' kids that we talk to, because they're not listening to their parents, but they'll listen to you. Mm-hmm. That stuff matters, man. And I think from an adult standpoint, I encourage everyone to continue to have those conversations with your own kids as well as with others. And from any young adult who's watching this, don't ever feel like you can't have those conversations with someone who's willing to share a piece of themselves with you. Yes. Because we always want your path to be more enlightened and a little less downtrodden than some of our past that we've had in the past. So continue that dialogue, never be afraid of it, and touch it back on another thing, always continue to grow.
Amen.
Absolutely.
That's excellent. So I just like you guys, I didn't really have anything planned per se, but after this discussion, I think one thing that I've learned is or that I would like to highlight. I don't want to say I've learned, I've always known this, but don't give up. For those young people that are in the middle of something, don't give up. I've known in my life people who were immensely talented. Some of those people climbed to certain heights in life. Some people did not. And the thing that kind of distinguishes them is the people that did climb to higher heights or get to higher levels is they just didn't give up. Some of the most talented people I've ever known didn't get to the heights that they could have gotten to. And part of that is not just them, but having someone to encourage them. So if you're a parent or a relative, always try to encourage these young people because they don't know where they can get to. Me coming up, I didn't know that I could do better or I could do more things or I had more talent than I realized. Even when somebody would tell me, oh, you have potential, like in sports or in school, you got a lot of potential. I didn't even really know what that meant. So, pour into these young people, always continue to encourage them. Like Ken said, it was with your kids or just people that, relatives or friends. It's kind of a lifelong thing. They're going to need that encouragement and that support, no matter what they do. If they become an entrepreneur, they're definitely going to need some support. Or if they go into the corporate world, there's going to be some times when they need that support. So as a young person, don't give up. And as a support system person, always continue to pour into these young people and help them succeed and be successful.
That's right. That's my closing thought. That's good stuff.
Amen.
So, all right. So I think it was a great discussion tonight. The last piece of this will be our lives after school or after college. So that'll be some great insight, I think, especially considering where people in this podcast have gotten to. And we may have a bonus in that. I'll talk to the panelists about that a little bit later. So we'll see how that's going to turn out. But I want to thank everyone for watching this episode, and fellas, thanks for joining and giving your valuable insight as usual. And we'll talk to you maybe next Thursday.
All right.
Have a
Y'all
good
take
one.
care.
All right. All right.
Happy
fellas.
Easter.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Stop, look, and listen. Enjoy the vibe. Me and my peoples, we keep it live. So take a toke or take a sip. Hold up. Don't take a sniff.